It has been at least 5 years since I have used tips on my natural nails, and y'all have been asking me for so long, so here we go, you guys. I went to my local store and I grabbed the only dip powder and tips kit that I could find, which is this one here from Kiss. So I'm going to share some things I liked, some things I didn't like, and a lot of things I learned during this process. The kit includes 2 replacement brushes, which I did end up needing towards the end of the video. It also has this little sponge, which they are having us use as our dusting brush. I've never used a sponge before, so we're going to give it a whirl. This is the real MVP right here. This is what we're going to use to attach our tips, to use with the dip powder, and as our top coat. Here's the dip powder jar. It comes with 0.31 ounces. It did have a seal on it. Originally, I thought this was going to be a sheer pink, but it's actually clear. Then we have the activator, which comes in a small glass bottle. And then this I thought was interesting. It's a tray that they included. You don't always see these with kits, so I love that they have this, especially if you have longer nails or for the pour over method. For the tips, you get white and natural. There are 40 total, which we're going to talk more about later. This is the file and buffing block. I love that they included both, so we will be using this as well. Last but not least, we have this little wooden cuticle pusher. Here are the instructions. It goes over prep, how to attach the tips. It talks about doing removal, doing fills, and everything in between. To get started, I'm going to use my glass nail file. You can definitely use the file that the kit includes. I just prefer glass on my natural nails, and we want to shorten our natural nails to get ready for adding the tips. I am going to leave mine longer just because I create content, so I know y'all are probably watching this thinking, why is she adding tips? Her natural nails are long. I'm purely doing this to review the kit and help y'all learn how to do tips at home with dip powder. Once I'm done shaping all of my natural nails, I'm going to dust it off and then start to find my size with the tips. I went with white because it's going to make it so fast to get a French manicure. Now, overall, I was really impressed with the durability and the strength of these. They're probably the thickest tips I've ever seen, and I do appreciate that they come with 2 different shades with the white and the natural. So now I'm just going to go each nail and size it. I'm looking to make sure that the tip is not on my skin over here on my sidewall and that it fits nicely. If it is too small, I would suggest to go up a size and then we're going to file it into shape. So unfortunately, my pinkies are tiny and it only goes up to a size 9, so I'm gonna have to make this work. So I did this for each of my nails and I realized, y'all, that some of my nails on both of my hands were the same size, and then when I went to grab it, I didn't have enough. You can see I have lots of larger sizes left over, so I had to size up quite a bit and I'm going to have to file them smaller. So I will get 1 manicure out of these white tips, but I probably can't make a second. So just food for thought. If you're doing this for the tips, then I would suggest grabbing a set of tips elsewhere. So as you can see here, I am going to have to file them smaller to fit my nails. Once I'm done personalizing my nail tips, we're going to start with instructions. First step, it says, is to push back our cuticles. So I'm going to start with using this cuticle pusher here, and we're going to just gently push back the cuticle that is on the nail plate. So that is the dead skin that is on the natural nail. If you leave this on the natural nail, it will cause a lifting issue, which can trap moisture and cause greenies and all the things. So we really want to spend the time pushing back our cuticle. You can see I do a lot of focus over here in this corner sidewall area because that's where I have a lot built up on my natural nail. So again, I'm doing the same right here, and all of that would create a lifting issue if we were to leave that on the nail plate. However, because I do this so often on my left hand, I don't have very much, but on my right hand, when I started to use this on my thumb, I noticed it just was not cutting it because I don't do this hand as often. So if you find that this is the issue for you, I'm going to show you how to help during our prep process with the buffing block, but look at how much I have stuck here on my nail plate, and this is just not working. So I ended up grabbing my glass cuticle pusher because if I were to try to leave this, I will definitely have a lifting problem. So with my glass cuticle pusher, I'm just going to clean out that corner area that I was unable to get off with the wooden stick, and look at how much was stuck there. Like I said, I don't do this hand as often, so I'm going to have a lot more cuticle on my nail plate. And I just wanted to show you, I'm going to do my small little swirls, pushing it back on my nail plate. Look at how much more is coming off, and this was after I used that wooden stick. So you don't have to have a glass cuticle pusher, but I do highly suggest it. Now I'm just going to dust it off and get everything off of my nail plate. Next, we're going to use the buffing block, which is the pink side side here of our nail file, and we're going to remove the shine from our natural nails. Remember when I said earlier, if you only have this orange wood stick, that's all you have, then this is what you want to do. You want to focus your buffing block up in that same area. Just do small little swirls and make sure nothing is left on your nail plate. So this would be that final touch. Now, then we're going to go across the entire natural nail. Please be very gentle when you're doing this. You're just removing the shine. You're not trying to remove any ridges or really apply any pressure. This is just to remove the shine so that the dip powder has something to adhere to. So I do that for each of the nails, paying extra close attention up here, holding my skin back, making sure I get all the way into those sidewall areas. I love that it has a rounded edge, which makes this part a breeze. Then when I'm done with that, I go across the entire nail surface. So we're going to do that for all of the nails on both hands. Once I'm done, I dust it off. You can also use the sponge for this part as well. Now we can start on the next part. So the instructions state to use either acetone or rubbing alcohol to dehydrate your natural nails of any oil. Personally, I would use this pH prep from Sparkle & Co. because this is my go-to. However, I want to stay true to the experiment and follow the instructions. So you could use rubbing alcohol, but I do want to say if you're going to use anything with acetone or a nail polish remover, make sure it does not have any additives in it like coconut oil. You don't want any oil additives if you're using it for prep. So I did go ahead and grab some 100% pure acetone and I put it on a lint-free wipe, and now I'm just going to rub it across each of the nails to remove any leftover oil. All right, our natural nails are prepped and now we're ready to adhere our tips. So I've got that brush on nail glue. This is what we're going to use to adhere our tips. It does say to start with your dominant hand first, so that's what I'm going to do. You only need a little bit. So I'm just going to use a tiny bit, apply it to the well of the tip here, and then I'm going to attach it hopefully straight to my pinky nail and hold. You do want to hold it until you feel it grab onto the natural nail and it dries. Then I am going to go ahead and pinch the sides in just to make sure that it's really on there well. So I'm going to repeat these steps, just applying a little bit of the glue to this well and then attaching it to the natural nail, holding it into place and then squeezing those sides in. I'm just checking here to see that it looks straight, and thankfully it does. Y'all have to remember, I'm learning right alongside with you. I haven't done this in so many years. I will say I probably made it harder on myself by leaving my natural nails longer, so I think if you do it shorter, these are going to adhere even better. If you do have any glue that comes out on your natural nail, I would suggest cleaning it up with a napkin or a lint-free wipe too. So I don't have any nail tip clippers, so if you do, I would highly suggest using those instead of these. But you know what, y'all, we're DIY girls and this is what we're going to do. We're going to use what we have at home, and I'm just going to shape these down a tiny bit so that I can do my other hand. I'm also going to leave them longer and I'm going to file them later, so make sure you don't cut off too much. Right, now that they're shorter, I feel like I can better manage to do my other hand. So I'm going to start at my pinky again, just repeating those steps, holding it into place, and then pinching the sides. Don't forget to clean off any excess nail glue that goes on your natural nail, because I didn't do that, and then I was able to actually see it in the end process. Once I'm done adhering them to each of the nails, then I'm just going to cut them down, making sure I leave some extra length so I can file them later. Then I grab my little nail file here, and I'm going to go for a tapered square look. And y'all, it does work. As you can see, I did this as an example, but it really takes so long. This grit is just wearing off by the second. These tips are really thick, as I mentioned earlier, which is great for durability, but this poor little file is just not going to make it. So I'm going to come in here and do some tapering because they do have quite a flare to them, but I did end up grabbing my McCart nail file because I will be here for hours if I use this file. And honestly, I don't think it's going to make it through a second manicure, especially if I file it for the tips and the dip powder. I'm going to leave all of these extra products linked down in the description box. I love these files. They've got a really nice rounded shape. They last a long time and it makes shaping super fast and easy. So I do this for all of the nails and both of my hands, making sure I don't have any fraying underneath. So we're going to clean that out. And now we need to blend it down. So where that meets the natural nail, that little ledge here, we're going to blend that down. Please go very slow and be very careful when you're doing this that you're not etching into your natural nail. This is also going to help the dip powder adhere as well. I was nervous at first that this was going to make the tip look bad or have etch marks in it when I did the French look, but overall, after I had the dip powder on top and the top coat and everything else, you really can't even tell that you did this step. Once I'm done with all of the nails, I'm going to dust it off, and now we can start on the dip powder. The instructions state to pour the jar into this little tray here, so that's what we're going to do. I did notice I had a lot of fuzzies in my dip powder, which was interesting because it did have a seal, so I'm just going to get some of that out first. Now I'm going to remove the excess product on my base glue, and we're going to do a small stripe down the center of our nail, starting on our dominant hand first. Then dip the nail into the dip powder and tap off. That's going to be our first layer. We're going to build up an apex and basically a buffer across the tip so that we can file it into shape and that you won't see any ledge or rippling right there. Building up the apex will also give us that beautiful natural arch on our nail and the strength that we need because we did add length to our natural nails. So while this hand dries, I'm going to start on my other hand, doing a small stripe down the center and dipping my nail into the powder. Once I'm done with all of the nails, then I'm going to go back to my right hand and use this little sponge to dust off the excess powder. This is why I waited, because I wanted to make sure this hand was fully dry first. Now you're going to need a paper towel or a dry napkin to wipe your brush off on. So we're going to remove the excess product from our brush, and this time we're going to go a little bit more further back, so towards our cuticle area, and a little bit more towards our sidewalls. You're going to basically leave a hairline gap away, and that will be your second layer. This is in real time. I did no edits right here. Then we're going to wipe our brush off on it and return it to the bottle, then dip into the powder and tap off. All of that is in real time. That's how slow I move, especially when I'm using it on my dominant hand. So that is layer number 2. Then we repeat those steps for the rest of our nails. So leaving a hairline gap from our cuticle area and our sidewalls, wiping the brush off on the napkin so that we don't contaminate our bottle, so that's why we're doing that, and then dipping into the powder and tapping off the excess. So right now we are just building up product on top of our tip and our natural nail for strength, for that arch, to build an apex so that we can file and shape it later. Then once I'm done with my dominant hand, I'm going to use my sponge to dust off layer number 1 on my non-dominant hand. Then we can repeat all of those same steps again, removing that excess product and starting on layer number 2. So leave that hairline gap away from the sidewall and the cuticle area, wiping off your brush and dipping into the powder and tapping off the excess. Right, so now layer number 2 is done on both hands. We're going to go back to our dominant hand and wipe off layer number 2. Now we can start on layer number 3. So layer number 3 is going to guide that liquid all the way back. This is going to be a full layer across our entire nail, and make sure you do not get this product on your skin. Get all the way over to those pesky corners on those tips, wipe your brush off and dip into the powder. Tap off the excess. Then it does suggest to use your stick to clean up around your cuticle area. This is really wide, so I did attempt to use this side of the stick. It's just super awkward. I would suggest to use a toothpick instead, or even a precision tool, which I'll show you later. So we're going to keep on chugging, and we're going to do another full layer across each of our nails on our dominant hand. Just go really slow, make sure you don't get this product on your skin, and do a light, even coverage across the entire nail. Be sure to wipe your brush off before returning it to the bottle and dip into the powder. Then before that base liquid dries, I'm going to use my precision tool this time to clean up around my cuticle area. So you just run this up here to make sure there's no product on your skin and so that you get a crisp, clean look. Here's a side-by-side on just how large the point is on that, which would remove a lot more product than you would want. Overall, I did feel like the liquid was very easy to use. It wasn't super thick. It didn't dry too fast. I just found the application to be very straightforward. Once I finish this hand, then I'm going to go back to my other hand. We're going to dust off that excess powder and repeat all of those same steps. So this will be layer number 3, which is a full layer. Guide it all the way to those sidewalls, those corner areas, and make sure you don't get this product on your skin. Wipe your brush off before returning it to the bottle and dip into the powder. One of the best things about doing DIY nails is you can do whatever you want. If you look at this and say that's too many layers, then you don't have to do this many layers. If you need more layers, then you can totally do more layers. It's up to you. I opted to do this technique so that I had enough product on top of those tips to blend them down. All right, both hands are done now for layer number 3. We're going to dust off our dominant hand and start on layer number 4. Don't worry, y'all. This is the last and final layer, which is also going to be another full layer. So we're going to do a full layer of our base liquid across the entire nail, including the tips and those corner areas and the free edge, because we really want to have all of that strength there. Then wipe your brush off and dip into the powder. Make sure you're always wiping your brush off before returning it to the bottle because you don't want to contaminate it. What will happen is your brush will get hard and thick and goopy, which you're going to see later. It actually happens to me, but not at this point. So I'm all done with my right hand. Now I'm going to start on my left. We need to dust off that last layer and repeat all of those same steps again. So a full layer across the entire nail. Make sure you don't get this on your skin. Wipe your brush off before returning it to the bottle and dip into the powder. Doing this particular technique with a white tip and a clear dip powder will be especially helpful if you want to do fills, because all you have to do is just fill this clear. And it's not going to look bad when it grows out because it's going to be super natural looking with it being clear. All right, y'all, that is it for the dip powder process. So we're going to use our sponge to dust off all of the excess powder on both hands. Then I'm going to pour the powder back into the jar so that there's no waste. Now we need our activator, so we're going to apply a layer of this to each of the nails. I read the instructions and it didn't have a specific dry time. However, most of the time I find it's 2 minutes, so that's what I'm going to do. I apply a layer of this to all of the nails and then I wait 2 minutes before I go to file and shape. You can tell when they're dry because if you tap your nail or a file on top of them and you hear a hard clicking sound, so if you tap here and you hear a clicking sound, then you'll know that they're hardened. I start by doing my free edge shaping first, and then I use the file to go across the entire top surface. This is going to blend down all of those layers that we did. I did want to show you this file does work, but as I mentioned earlier, it's going to take a long time and I can really feel that the grit is just disappearing by the minute. So I would highly suggest checking out those files I mentioned earlier. All products will be in the description box, but I'm just going to blend down all of those dip powder layers so I don't have any unevenness across the surface. Then when I'm happy with it, I'm going to flip the file over and use the buffing block side to smooth it all out. I will say I did like the buffing block, but I just don't feel this file is going to make it through another manicure. I gave it my best college try, so I went back to my old faithful file and I'm going to go back and do my free edge shaping for each of the nails, just quickly going around them, going back in for a tapered square look, and then across the entire surface to make sure I don't have any unevenness, and then I will go back and use that buffing block on top as well. I don't want to bore y'all to death, so I do that for every single nail. Then when I'm happy with both hands, I'm going to dust it off. You can use your sponge for this part. Now we need to apply another layer of activator, so I do this for each of the nails, and I'm going to go ahead and wait 2 minutes for this to dry. The instructions don't have a dry time again, so I wait 2 minutes. Then I'm going to go in with a dry lint-free wipe and rub it across each of the nails. This is going to make sure I don't have any leftover activator residue before I go in for my top coat. So this same product is also our top coat. We're going to do a full layer across the entire nail and then make sure to wipe your brush off before returning it to the bottle. The instructions state to do 1 coat, so that's what I did. I did it on each of the nails, both hands, and I let it dry. But I really just was not impressed with the shine, and I will say in all the years I've done dip powder, 99.9% of the time the top coats allow for 2 layers. So I thought, you know what? Let's give it a whirl. Let's try it. So, after this layer was completely dry to the touch and it dries pretty quick, I decided to give it a whirl and try for layer number two. When I went in for layer number two, I noticed that it started to make my brush harden. So you'll see right here when I wipe it off on the napkin, you'll see some of those bristles are hardening. But honestly, this is not a big deal because they gave us replacement brushes, so I really wasn't too worried about it. I decided after this nail that I was going to replace the brush, so I just left this one here on my napkin and I grabbed a clean brush and it worked beautifully. Ultimately, it dried fine, and at that time, I was really happy with the shine. So I will say do this, at your own risk, but it does work if you want to go in for a second coat. So after I finished all of the nails and the top coat was completely dry again, so after a couple minutes, I wanted to show you how I like to clean up my dip powder kits. So I'm going to use that same paper towel. You can use a lint-free wipe or a napkin, and we're going to clean off the rim of this bottle because if you leave any excess product up there, it's going to get sealed shut when you try to use this again. So clean it up and then you can close it up. The most important part to any beautiful manicure is cuticle oil. We really stripped our nails and skin of all of that moisture when we did our prep process, so it's important that we replenish that. Overall, I would suggest this kit. I wore this manicure for 1 week with no issues, no lifting, no cracking, no chipping before I had to remove it so I could keep up with content. But I do think it's a great bang for your buck. My only complaints would be there's not a good variation of tips, so I would suggest to grab more tips, and you're definitely going to need some files. But those are such small problems when you compare to how much you get into this kit. The clear, y'all, is crystal clear. I accidentally left some excess glue and you can see it right here, which only shows how clear it is. I also like the liquid, so for me, I would say it's a win, especially as a beginner. I have a lot of room for improvement, but I enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to leave my removal video down in the description box and in the comments. I hope you found today's video helpful, and I'll see y'all next week.